Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Bill Nemeth. I'm going to be your panelist moderator. You won't see me in a little while because we actually have 6 different panelists today that all have experience in dealing in a crisis situation like we find ourselves from a customer-facing perspective. They represent people that have spent their careers, are currently running companies, are currently dealing with the crisis that's going on, but also lived through 2008 and the time immediately after that in the Great Recession. This isn't about selling tactics. This is about how you're going to need to talk to your customers now from a sales and a marketing perspective. Our intent here is to give you actionable steps that you can take. A little bit on my background. I'm a recovering entrepreneur. That means I probably will fall off the wagon again and start another company in the future. But I run the mentoring program for Jumpstart. We have 140 plus mentors out there, sponsored by the Burton D. Morgan Foundation, who is an entrepreneurial foundation that contributes money, time, talent across the region to help further entrepreneurs here in Northeast Ohio. I lived through 2008, had to make a lot of decisions that I regret because I didn't do them fast enough. A lot of decisions I look back on and say, had to do it even though they were really painful. One of the keys to making it through is communicating with your customers, still communicating with your prospects. So with that, that's why we're here. I would like to now have our panelists introduce themselves one by one, and they'll give a little background on themselves. I will start with Nikki DiFilippo.
Hey everyone, I'm Nikki DiFilippo. I have my own company, Via Vera Group, which I started 15 years ago. I work with early stage tech B2B companies and help them accelerate growth through marketing and business strategy. I'm also a mentor at Jumpstart, and I also mentor some students at Case Western Reserve. And my one thing, which is kind of a step 1, 2, and 3, is to stabilize your organization, reset your strategy, and rebound.
Roy Hodge.
Yes, Roy Hodge, CEO of REH Systems Solutions, president of the Toledo African American Chamber of Commerce, entrepreneur in residence at Jumpstart, working out of the Toledo office. The takeaways from me are: talk to customers, throw away all assumptions, test and reset your value proposition.
Sue Grabowski, please.
Hi, I'm Sue Grabowski. I am a Uniontown, Ohio-based entrepreneur. I've been in business 23 years, a full-service marketing agency serving primarily business-to-business clients in manufacturing, professional services, and healthcare. And my one thing is just sending out emails or sending out information is not communicating.
Tim Austin.
Hi, my name is Tim Austin. I'm the Vice President of Sales with Group Management Services. And our company provides an outsourced HR department for small to mid-sized businesses and startups in terms of workers' comp, payroll, and benefits and things like that. And I'm not saying that to give a plug for GMS. I'm simply saying that from a client services standpoint, we are in the thick of this with our clients because we're doing a lot of the things that they need done during a pandemic like this. When this started, my thing was I relied on what I had known best, which was go knock on more doors. And I quickly realized, and when I say quickly, I mean within a few days, that if I do that and our sales team does that, we could possibly hurt ourselves in the long run. And I realized that there were two things that we could do, and we had an option to either bury our heads in the sand and hope that this would be over soon, or to prepare our ways to excel out of this. And I'll probably share some of those, or not probably, I will share some of the things that we're doing right now and our objectives to prepare to excel out of this.
Steve Santamaria, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Santamaria. I'm the CEO of Folio Photonics. We're a startup that spun out of the Case Western Reserve. We do enterprise data storage products here in Solon, Ohio. The last 2 big crises I was part of was the recession in 2008, but also 9/11. And in both times I was working for Intel Corporation on the West Coast. And I learned a lot at that company about how to take fast and decisive action. And I'm just want to share a quote from Andy Grove, who said, "Bad companies are destroyed by crises. Good companies survive them, and great companies are improved by them." And the one critical thing that I would share with each of you is to understand that this is the new normal. And your job as a leader of your business is to embrace that new normal and start making the changes necessary to get your company through this and to prosper afterwards.
Last but not least, John Kunst.
Hi, everybody. John here. I wear a number of hats. For the last 2 years, I've been a jumpstart mentor, mentoring startups and scale-up companies. My day job is with IBM, where I am part of a team. I always like to say I'm the guy that buys the companies. Our company buys your company, and then we try to figure out how to incorporate it into our sales teams. I have a global role, so I've traveled all over the world. So as you can imagine, my job has dramatically changed the last few weeks. But I've also had the pleasure, I suppose, of living through not only the 1987 Black Friday sort of crisis, the 2001.com, or the 2001.com bust, as well as the 2008-9 financial crisis. And Steve's absolutely right. These are for every one of those, there is a new normal. We never really go back to what we were doing. And in preparation of this, I've identified a couple of things, but I will tell you what I think the number one thing I've seen, and it's something we started deploying even before it, is what I call empathy selling. So blasting, emails and just stuff that it's all about you isn't going to work. You got to take a step back. We do a lot of persona based work. I think people have buying personas, but my suggestion is take that to the next step and empathize with those personas. Get in their heads. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they doing? What are they saying? If you take that approach, then when you call them up, and by the way, the phone, I believe, is the old school tool that's still very effective. They'll appreciate your call if you're empathizing with them and you understand their pains. And ultimately, people buy from who they trust. And if they trust you, your sales process may slow down a bit, but it will continue to move forward.
Thanks, John. And I'm going to make one quick editorial comment. The advice you're going to hear today isn't just for the situation you're in. A lot of it is truly best practice that your organization should pursue when we get through what we're going through right now. So with that, I'm going to start off with the first question, and Mr. Austin, I'm going to start with you. Is this unprecedented? I mean, how does it compare to 2008? What's different this time?
I wrote that in my note to you about this is not an unprecedented time, and I will say that I didn't make that line up. I actually watched the Simon Sinek video the other day where he was training his team, and he said, this is not an unprecedented time, and forgive me if I misquote him, but he said to his team this, and it's a 6-minute video, it's definitely worth watching. He said, this is not an unprecedented time. When the internet came about, there were thousands upon thousands of businesses that didn't pivot and adjust, and they went out of business. When Starbucks started moving on every corner, there were businesses and coffee shops that didn't pivot and adjust, and they all went out of business. When live streaming and video, and when video streaming and Netflix and things like that came about, all of your Blockbusters and video chains that rented VHS tapes and stuff that didn't adjust, they went out of business. This is a time that you have to adjust and you have to pivot and you have to realize what's working and what's not working. So when I said that that I stole that from Simon Sinek, and that was my point of why, as we can make this out to be an unprecedented time, but this world has gone through a pandemic before and they've gotten through it. And this world has gone through a downturn in the economy and they've gotten through it. The people that get through it are the ones that pivot and adjust and figure out ways to pivot and adjust.
Hey, Hey, Bill, can I jump on the Simon Sinek bandwagon?
Please go ahead.
So yeah, actually, one of my number one points that I came up with was, and Simon just had a book club on his book, What's Your Why? And his number one thing was revisit your why. Now's a great time to revisit your why. And as Simon says, people don't buy for what you do, they buy for why you do it. And he had a great idea, so I'm going to steal it, which is get everyone on your team to come up with 15 new ideas in 48 hours each, 15 each in 48 hours, come together and evaluate them. That'll allow you to revisit what you're doing, why you're doing it, and ultimately potentially pivot and become, as somebody said, I think, Steve, if you're a great company, you're going to be even better at the end of this thing.
You know, and Nikki, is this a time when you'll figure out if you really have a value proposition or not?
Well, I think it's definitely time to evaluate it. In most cases, what you're offering companies today may not be of value to them, or it may be of more value. So it depends on the business that you're in, but it's definitely a time to take a look at where you're at and where the trends are.
Go ahead, Steve.
My comment on that, before this started, you had a value proposition. Everyone, you had a successful business of some kind. What this is forcing you is to find out, does that value proposition, does it still hunt in this new normal and where we're going to? And that's what you have to test for yourself, right? Because, you know, if you're in, you know, if you're Airbnb based business, you're coming out of this, you're gonna be in an awkward spot probably. But, you know, the other ones like the DoorDashes, et cetera, are thriving in this type of thing. And, you know, who knows how long this lasts, right? I mean, I would not want to be the CEO of an airline company right now. I can't even imagine what they're going through. But as CEO of my company, I'm going, okay, we hunted before in the new world where things are more digital, data is more centric. It may be a good thing for me, and I want to make sure that that value proposition stays very honed in on meeting the customer's needs.
So Sue, how do you figure it out? How do you figure it out? And as Steve said, does your value proposition still hunt?
Couple things, I think. I mean, what comes to mind for I'm evaluating it for both my business and my clients' businesses at this point. So I can say that you always have to have a look ahead, and that's tough during times like right now because you can only see right in front of your face, it appears, but you've got to be thinking on the other side of things. And so you know, for our own business, I realized about 4 or 5 years ago that agencies like mine were probably dead, because you don't need me for the things that you thought you needed me for or you paid me for before. And so now you have to take and look at, okay, you almost have to become, you got to think full spectrum of the horizon, right? Go all the way to the worst case scenario. I like to think worst case scenario. So what if nothing that we do, make your service list of what you do, what if none of those are needed afterward? What remains? And so we've begun to morph our kind of core competencies into spotting, going, I think that's going away and that's going away, but they need us for our brains. So how do we apply our brains in a different way? And the outwork might be different, the outcomes, but we can apply some of our time-tested methodologies. We're doing the same thing with our clients, forcing them to think about, you know, process and requirements gathering and ultimately objective setting. What do you want to do? And then looking at what if we can't do those things and backing it out, because generally speaking, you're not going to go all the way to the end of all of it's going to blow up, but you need to examine it and kind of put to death the things that you maybe have been clinging to for a long time, and then back your approach up from there.
So Roy, since you're in the thick of it now and have been through this before, it sounds like what the other folks are saying is you're back to customer discovery again.
I can agree with I can agree with that. And so in my opening statement, I identified 3 points. 1, talk to customers, which connects to your premise, Bill, about you're in customer discovery again. Throw assumptions, and let me back up. So talk to customers. What we've done this week internally as a team is we went through our entire customer base to identify where the bulk of the revenue was coming from. So the customers that generate 80% of our revenue, we were able to put our fingers on them. And so we created a strategy to reach out to those customers. Some of it was by phone, other communication by email, and other communication, ironically, by text. Our customers are responding. So talk to customers, enable all channels of communication, like one of the panelists said earlier, and not just rely on one channel of communication. Point two, throw away assumptions. The old paradigm is shot to the point of most of the panelists. We had to ask some qualifying questions to discover how this COVID-19 pandemic has impacted customers. We've discovered that it's impacted some customers in ways that are different than other customers. So, given that, it put us in a position to test and reset our value proposition. So ultimately we may have to come up with multiple narratives that are customized and targeted to specific customers that are impacted in different ways.
And this, I'll throw out to all of you. Is this something that the entrepreneurs should be doing in a vacuum, or should they be looking for help? Paid, unpaid counselors, I guess. How do you come up with the ideas? Is it your staff? Is it external resources? I mean, who do you call upon? Go ahead, Steve.
For me, we're a small startup. It's sure I have a regular staff meeting, but my board has been unbelievable through this. They have been so accessible. They are a tremendous business experience, and they have this huge network of connections. And so we're actually engaging more with strategic partners and with large end customers through introductions, very warm introductions that my board is helping me set up. So I would reach out to those type of assets that you have that before I probably was too busy to use the board as much as I should have in the past, but now I have a lot of time. I'm not on airplanes. And so I have one-on-one conversations with them, and I say, who do you know in this industry, et cetera? They go, well, I happen to know somebody. And then 5 days later, they say, hey, I got you an introduction. And no way I could have gotten that, but they're shaking their networks for us, and they're more than willing to help. They've been really super. My board has been phenomenal.
And Nikki, John, you're both mentors. I mean, is this something you're hearing from your startups? I mean, are they reaching out to you, or are you having to call them up and say, hey, can I help you? John, go ahead.
A little bit of both. Got one that's we've been talking pretty regularly, and he's making some pivots in what he's doing. The other one I haven't heard from so much, but I do think now's the time to what's interesting about this, what's different, I think, is this is a health sort of issue crisis, and people are relating to that. So I think people are really willing to reach. I mean, the fact that the 6 of us are on this phone, on this video right now, is because we're willing to take time out of our days to help people. And so I think people are mostly caring and will help you. So boards, mentors, other entrepreneurs, and even your clients. I mean, your clients they're trying to figure it out too. So, reach out to them and get advice and guidance from them in a non-threatening, empathetic way, and they'll be more than happy to help you.
Nikki?
Yeah, for me, I have 2 companies that I'm mentoring. I haven't heard from one yet. The other one I was on a call with this past week with a couple of other mentors on the team, and they just created some timely content relating to a pandemic. So they basically turned to us for ideas, and all 3 of us mentors have homework to do to help them out. So looking forward to that, because we all have different perspectives, and I think they're using us plus their own personal network to take things to the next level.
Bill, I am mentoring Deep Hire, and Stephen Gates reached out to me as well. And to answer the question of where can you turn to, my philosophy is everywhere you can. If you see me looking down right now, I'm taking notes on what people are sharing, because there's some good points to be made here. I was texted a message from a rabbi in Sydney, and it was very powerful to me on how to deal with this, from a friend of mine who I haven't seen or talked to in 30 years. I listen to webinars and I get points and things like that. And so realize that you're not the only one going through this. And a philosophy I've always tried to live by is what you put into the lives of others will someday come back to your own. And so there are other people that are going through this that are willing to share their ups and their downs and things that is working and things that hasn't worked. And so my approach is to get advice and information everywhere you can.
Good.
Thanks. I want to pivot just a little bit. Current customers. You know, every one of our entrepreneurs out there right now, business owners, has customers, or they wouldn't have a business. Let's start with John. What do you say? I mean, you're making the first contact. You advocate phone, maybe an email first. I mean, where do you even start?
I mean, and a couple of thoughts I had on this prepping. One, obviously, is to, again, take a step back and really empathize with them. And I'll probably say that more than I need to. I really do think people, if you pick up the phone and just say, hey, how are you doing? I'm worried about you, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, they're going to, and I keep meaning to do this and I keep getting distracted, but I think just reaching out and helping. But from a tactical standpoint, one of the ideas I came up with is if you have existing customers, now's the time to help them drive adoption to your product or service. And so what I mean by that is sort of going through maybe, let's say you offer training and maybe it was face-to-face. What you see behind me is actually some training I do with my clients, and I've always done it in a face-to-face meeting. I'm now trying to figure out how to deliver that training globally, virtually. And it's sort of hard. But I think if you could move your training and your adoption of your product or your service, you know, create YouTubes or actual web content that they can, you know, and potentially give it away for free, because the more that you help them adopt whatever you sell, when we get out, you know, when we start to pick up, they'll be your best friends or your allies.
I want to just jump in when you said about empathize, and I'll just give an example. I'm dealing with a partner in Japan, and we're trying to get this deal done. And for the last 3 weeks, for 3 weeks ago, I was pushing on them really hard, and it was looking at it, like, I kept, for some reason, I thought that it was my problem. COVID was here, it was in the US, all about me. And I never stopped to think about it. What's going on in Tokyo? And they're completely shut down. And, you know, they are really locked in that city. And I had to take a step back and saying, listen, it's not about me. The guy on the other end of the phone is dealing with probably a worst case situation than what we have here in Ohio. Right, we flattened our curve. They're coming up on a crazy peak. They have supply issues. There are a lot of things that you don't see in the news. And I took a moment and said, you know, I was so focused on for my company about me that I wasn't thinking about them and what they're dealing with. And so I slowed down and we spent a little bit more time talking about family and things like that. And they just opened up a lot more, right? Because it's not, you know, we're all under pressure. We got to get the deal. We got to get the thing done. But you remember on the other side, there's somebody who's trying to find toilet paper, who has 2 kids they're trying to teach from home. You know, everything that we're dealing with, and to assume different is a big mistake we make. And so, you know, try to put yourself in their shoes a little bit, and you'll get, you know, the return is great. I mean, the dialogues now is just wonderful. It's much looser. It's more personal than what it was. Instead of like, all right, what do we need to do to get this done? I'm gonna hit this milestone, blah 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 blah. And I just stopped, saying, how are you doing?
Can I add something to that too?
Please go ahead, Sue.
So this is what I'm seeing with my clients is because it's craziness. It's just unprecedented. It is unprecedented. I mean, definitely a similar feeling to 0809, but this is really weird. But because for some of my clients, things are busy, they're relegating communications to people that have no business communicating with customers right now. You really need to take consideration into every single touch point you have with customers. That means on social media, that means, you just can't keep sending notices of what you're doing. Number one, nobody cares. And two, not taking into consideration, to your point, that everybody's uncomfortable. That's the word that really is sitting with me right now. Everyone is uncomfortable. And if we ignore that, you really miss opportunities to build relationship with your clients. You really miss out on listening to what they actually need, which you might be able to provide. And they'll ignore you if your communication is meaningless. So your subject lines on your emails matter because they're skimming what they're going to read. Your text to them matters. If you come off as flippant, especially through binary code, which is text and email, that's just a bunch of binary code. We're trying to interpret emotion through it. You're really missing opportunities. It's not so much, it could be a detriment, but it really is I think, missed opportunity right now to remember that there are humans at the other end of all of this. And even though things are busy and maybe you've got issues at your office or your kids are running around, right? You got to stop and pause. And I think this one benefit of all of this is it's forcing us to pause, to take a second, because you can't do things the way that you normally could do them. So I see that as opportunity, not as a detriment.
Agreed.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Please go ahead.
So when I look at this, I look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, both from a personal side and also from a business side. From a personal side, you're looking at basic survival. Some cases, I've made some phone calls. Some of the people that I've been working with are no longer there because they're out of a job. So you need to understand the basics of survival from a personal perspective. Asking them about their family, how are they personally? Is there anything you can do to help? Can you provide some resources? So that's how I look at it from the first conversation. And then looking at it from a business side, I look at survival, where you need to start first. So before you even do anything, you need to make sure you have cash to get you through a certain amount of time, because maybe those checks that were coming in the mail aren't going to be coming in the mail like they used to. Are your operations still in place? Are they solid? So starting at the bottom and addressing it from a Maslow's perspective, survival, and then taking it up a notch from there and looking into growth. But that would be my first conversation, just starting with survival and the basics, both from a business and individual perspective.
Yeah, everyone should remember that people are sitting in their houses all day, surrounded by their dogs, their pets, their significant others, their kids. They tend to crave talking to another adult human being that they don't see every single day, every single hour, and just shooting the breeze with them is a fantastic relief. You will find that calls take longer now because you spend 15, 20 minutes just talking about some of the things that we have here that have even toilet paper, groceries. I can't find a mask. My dog. Oh my God, my dog. You meet people's dogs, you meet people's kids during this. So that's part of empathizing. You brought up a less charming topic, Nikki, and I'm going to throw this in Roy's lap. How do you have that conversation about are you going to pay my invoice? I mean, how do you do that?
That's a tough conversation to have at any time, but I've had to have that conversation with clients. In fact, I've had to show up on clients' front door, with a copy of the invoice, asking that. It goes back to the relationship and just gauging, how well have I connected with this person? Do they have the decision in their lap? Do they need to escalate the decision to someone else in the organization? Be cognizant of what that is, what those dynamics are. If you're dealing with a decision maker that can handle it at their level, my conversation has always been completely transparent and completely open. Emphasizing and empathizing and connecting with people. I've had to say to a client that, hey, if you don't pay me within a certain time period, this is going to happen. It's going to put me in a position where I'm not going to be able to provide the the excellent customer service that you're used to getting from me. And the conversation will flow from there to an ETA on when payment can be expected. And my message for them is, I'm flexible. I'm willing to own the weight of this burden with you as a customer, which is a testament to how I value the relationship that I have with you. I believe all of that, weighs into the strategy, and each strategy is different depending upon the conversation you're having with various customers. Given the receivable and how dated it is. But in general, it's just a real heart to heart. Just connect. I mean, these are the people we've been establishing relationships with for the time it took for us to acquire them as a customer. So I would lean in on the foundation of that relationship. We know where the parameters are in terms of what's on the table or off the table in terms of a professional conversation with a customer. But if it means me collecting on an invoice to keep the ship afloat, I have no problem, reaching out and engaging in that very tough conversation. That's something that we have to do in order to survive.
Sue, you're nodding your head. I mean, how much candor can you have?
Yeah, I think that again, start with the basic needs, like you said. You got to ease into those conversations right now, but we're having those same tough conversations, and we understand and we're flexible, but we need something in writing. We need to know exactly when we're going to get paid because we have projections to make and we have people to employ. So, and they know that. Nobody wants to have that tough conversation. So I think you just have to temper it these days with that balance of the human element. We know that this is tough. We know that things are tight. We're going to stick with you through this whole thing, but we got to pay our bills. And you can't avoid those conversations.
Is it fair to make exchanges now? As in, I'll cut you a deal now, or pay me in 3 months if I get X? I mean, is this a horse trading scenario? Kim?
I don't see, one of the things our sales process is always, I feel I've always been consciously competent, and we just are going through and doing what we have a very strong strategy and process. And now I believe that we need to sprinkle new things in every day and see if they work, and not do it for the masses. But I don't think there's anything wrong with trying it. You may even try to barter toilet paper because people can't find it. Maybe one of your customers is the one that bought 40 cases of it for some reason. And also understand your own. I think it's really imperative to understand your own business. In our business, we collect our clients' workers' compensation. We collect and handle all of their state unemployment, and we do all of their healthcare benefits. And right out of the rip from this, we told all of our clients that if they needed and or wanted to do a 30-day grace period on those 3 bills, that we would allow them to pay their state unemployment, their workers' comp, and their benefits in May for April, and then we'd reevaluate it every 30 days. But again, we understand that we can do that. Some people can't. But to answer your question, Bill, is what's the harm in trying if it's going to work? If you have a client that provides digital marketing and you're an XYZ company, do this for them and they can do this for you.
Well,
I mean,
first of all,
I'm
sorry. In terms of closing on these elements, we're all in business. You shouldn't be ashamed to be asked to get paid, right? I mean, I had a very frank conversation this morning, and I'm like, all right, this is what I need. This is where we're at. I understand. If you have tough times, tell me what we need to do. We'll work through it. I'll work with you, but you kind of owe me something right now. So I'm not ashamed to be asked that, and I don't think anybody should be ashamed. This is business. You're business people get paid.
That's right.
I mean, is this a situation where it's still okay to fire a customer? Go ahead. I see a lot of
Boy,
nodding heads.
that's a I don't think about that one, Bill.
Good, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always, that's is equally a hard a conversation as asking them to pay their bills sometimes, because that can get pretty emotional. But I do think that if you're not working together, because we're all in this situation together, yeah, I'd say maybe it is time to make that hard decision. I mean, you sort of have to evaluate the pros and cons, but I think you should always be evaluating those clients that are taking you down a rat hole, even in good times. And so you really don't need a client or a customer that's going to drain you of your energy and your cash and even your resources, particularly if you're downsizing your resources to stay in business.
And I wanted to bring it up because some people keep them around out of desperation now.
Right.
And it's going to be an eventual fatal mistake.
I think so.
So
I mean, you made the point earlier about doing a pivot, right? When you have I don't call them a customer if they're just a deadbeat taking services not paying, but maybe that's like they don't value your service enough. So maybe we should pivot into something where people are more willing to pay. Because people are getting paid.
Yeah, and business is moving, albeit a bit slow, but people are buying stuff. I mean, I'll give you an example. In our business, all of a sudden we've been mobile, work from home since early 90s. And all of a sudden our clients are calling us up because we actually have the infrastructure in place to handle this massive, move from an office to a thing. And so we are actually on our phone with some of our outsourcing clients, where now we're trying to help them figure out how to manage their infrastructure, their data centers, and their applications in a remote mode, because we've been doing it for 20 plus years. So that's a classic example of what I would also say, that's also where we're sort of giving to get, right? So we're giving intellectual capital knowledge that we've accumulated, that we take for granted, to better a relationship to help our clients move forward and get their business back on track.
We talk about pivoting. How do you find the opportunities? And we have people dealing with healthcare institutions now, especially here in Northeast Ohio, selling to the clinic and UH and Summa and the like. They've kind of got their hands full there. How do you even talk to them? I mean, how do you go about talking to an organization like that right now, where their buildings are on fire in certain cases? I mean, how would you start that conversation?
I don't know that you can. I still think there's too much fire going on, but I think you can do some legwork in the background to kind of work behind that, and maybe with people they know. But I'm not sure you can do that right now.
That's fair.
That's just my opinion. There's too much of a fire.
Anyone else? Because I'll address one that we have a client in the mentoring program right now, and they sell to staffing organizations and recruiters. Tim, you'll know him, and you mentioned him earlier. And there is no business there right now. I mean, literally, in their traditional vein. But when they looked at it, they said, "Oh wow, hospitals are hiring as fast as they humanly can. So is Walmart. So is Amazon. So is Kroger. Maybe we can retool what we're doing, not just to solve things for those organizations, do things faster from a hiring perspective, but they're geared for remote, like John said. They have intellectual capital that is geared 100% for remote. And they went out and tested that theory because it was that or do nothing. And suddenly they're talking to every hospital around, the staffing agency for nurses, et cetera. They're in a position where their projections could be 10 times too small compared to what their opportunity is now. And the conversation I had with them the week before was, are we going to make it? And that was just talking to people, going out and trying things like, throw it at the wall and see, at this point, what have we got to lose? So again, I want to shift a little bit now to marketing. Sue, you're dealing with this with large companies, small companies. Nikki, you're dealing with startups and tech companies and that. I'll start with you, Sue. What's changed?
Oh my gosh. Really everything instantly. So a big thing is, and I would encourage the attendees today to get this, you need to have a crisis communications strategy in advance of the crisis. And we've sold that for a long time, and people just don't seem to think that it can be there. But just think about this. I always think about this. What if your key person won the lottery? Let's not talk about somebody that, something is tragic, but let's think about if they up and left, or if somebody, defamed you hugely on social media or something. But so having a strategy in place before that's been huge, because what I found now is it's reactive, 100% reactive right now. We're all in that same boat, but some of my clients have some bigger issues to tackle. I was on with the media today because one of my clients owns the nursing home that half of the Stark County deaths have been in. And it is, it's been rough. So everything's changed in how we communicate with employees through empathy instead of just pushing information. Suddenly, the things that were taken for granted are not. For everything from convenience of access to how we frame out things. So what I would say in terms of practical tips is really divide up your audiences right now by your business types, by your employees, by your vendors, and really narrow down what you need to say to them, what they need to know from you only, and get that out in an empathetic way. And that could be by phone or whatever, but the frequency of communication has increased, and it should right now. And so that's changed as well. So some of my clients were only communicating with their customers when they needed to. Now they have the need to communicate more frequently. So really stepping back and analyzing who you need to talk to and what specifically do they need to know. Not that you want what you want them to hear, but what they need to know from you. And getting that out frequently is really critical. And that has definitely been a big change.
Nikki, does the message change now? Is it the same cadence as you normally would market, or what do you do?
So I look at it as business as usual as one track, and then I also look at another track of the current situation. And I would advise looking at your current customer list and reclassifying them into A, Bs, and Cs, depending on where you forecast their business to be going. If they're in the hotel business, you might not want to put them on the business as usual track, but something a little bit more around how to address their current situation. So that's what I would do. I would be starting to resegment your current list, and there could be some companies that are on business as usual, and there might be some that are going to be ramped up. So I would reclassify, and I think it's going to be different. If it's business as usual, they're going to get the business as usual track email plus the here's how we can help you during the current times track email. So that's what I would do, is resegment based on today's needs and add to that standard track, or pull out that track if it's not relevant.
So go, Steve.
Yeah, I want to add to that two things here. First of all, the whole spam thing, flooding people's inbox in the email, please stop it. Don't do it. People will do it to me. I'm unsubscribing, saying, don't ever call me again. Just whack. I'm sorry. I'm so overreacting. Normally I'd ignore it, but now I'm like, you will never get in my company ever again. Two, it's kind of funny because we're in this pandemic thing, and I find myself, I work a lot more, I have more time. And so what it allows me to be, and I encourage you all, is to be very deliberate. So I really curate my message to the individual. Like I had a meeting with a VC 2 days ago and dug into LinkedIn. I spent so much more time doing research, not counting on my typical just pitch. And I had a 30-minute call that went an hour and 20 minutes. But it was at a level that was never, I never would have done that research before. Now I do. So my message is just so much more on point. And second, if you do get a meeting for a business through your marketing efforts or et cetera, man, don't screw it up with a bad pitch. I mean, now you must practice. You're gonna have one shot because people have time. You know, what I'm finding is if you message right, you can get through layers that you couldn't get through before because people are really, they're a little bit less busy and you can get that meeting. But man, if you come in here and you just screw the pooch with your presentation, you mean it's like spamming them. They go, I just gave you time because you're interesting, you wrote something nice, and then you just failed to deliver, and you'll never get that back. So be very deliberate and curate message all the way through exchange, and you'll find it works. It's working for me at least.
I've seen a couple some good examples and some bad examples in the past couple of weeks. One of them was, or a couple of them have been insensitive to the whole situation and just saying, you need to market more now, more than ever. And it's like, wait a minute. So I've seen a couple of those. And then on the other hand, I've seen a couple of good examples, and I'll call out two examples. One was from Dixon Eaton. They talked about, should you market now or not? And they go through a couple scenarios so you can make the decision. I thought that was excellent. Secondly, John Pinney at KJK, he's the managing partner at the law firm, sent out an email saying, we have a hotline basically for 20 minutes. Any of you in small business want to talk to us about the CARES Act, we're here. And by the way, this is not intended to solicit business. So it's like he was just doing it. So those are two excellent examples of both of those organizations are highly relevant today, and they're creating this separate track of specialized communications for the current times without a hidden agenda. We're doing this to help you out.
I mean, it sounds like what you're all saying is almost content marketing is where it's at right now, but almost on a one-off basis.
Personalized,
specialized, thought through. Yeah.
I would add one thing, Bill.
Please.
What we're doing internally is evaluating the effectiveness of each of our sales and marketing channels. You know, looking at the conversion rate of customers, looking at the upsell rate, how much revenue are we generating through the various channels? Are there any channels that we need to invest in and create, more capacity and throughput? Are there certain channels that we just need to turn off because, our messaging is falling on deaf ears? And so once you do an evaluation of your lead conversion ratio per channel, now you're in a position to allocate resources in a way that, positions you better, right? So what we've done is that exercise. And then after completing that exercise internally, we've documented that messaging. So this is a messaging that goes out on this channel, this channel, this channel. This is a person within the organization that's been empowered to take the lead on getting that messaging out on an account by account basis. So this is where we've gone through an exercise of really digging into our account base and seeing who the lead is on each account, determining what channel they represent, what the messaging is for them specifically, and then who within our organization carries that message. And here's the last caveat. What is the desired outcome, or what is the action item? What do we want to move that customer towards in terms of a next step with our messaging? And then by doing that, it's been very, very helpful with us being able to validate, what sales and marketing channels are effective versus non-effective. And then we make that shift dynamically because each day we're having stand-up meetings for 5 minutes at a time just to get some feedback on how well those strategies are working.
So Tim, how do you sell in this environment, feeding off of what Roy just said?
I think that some of the buying cycles may be prolonged right now. I guess my philosophy and my thought is that buying cycles may be prolonged right now, or may be kicked down the road a little bit. But I think you have a phenomenal opportunity right now to build rapport like you've never done before. I think that the average salesperson and below average salesperson are hunkering down right now, burying their head in the sand, hoping that this ends tomorrow. And I think that the excellent ones are going to change their message a little bit and build rapport. And those that are building rapport right now will be remembered. And so our cold call, we've always been a cold calling machine. So the phone and the phone approach is nothing new to us. But where we used to just have this standardized pitch and we're trying to get 7 to 11 minutes of a prospect's time to show them what we do, how we do it, and see if we can get a shot at quoting their business. We obviously don't say it that fast, but some of our sales reps are starting the cold call with, hey, Steve, this is Tim, and believe it or not, I'm a sales professional. And they laugh a little bit. As a business owner, you're probably used to getting 20 sales calls a day, and now you're getting 300 spam emails. I'm still trying to keep my life normal, and I'd like to keep yours normal by being the one phone solicitation you get today, but I'm not trying to sell you something. And then we have a weekly webinar with all of our clients, and our client services teams that run those are unbelievably phenomenal. And we were given the permission to invite our prospects to those webinars. And our prospects have been attending these webinars and are getting information on the EFMLA, the Payroll Protection Act, the disaster loan recovery, how to apply for those. And our client services have gone as far as when our prospects have questions, they're jumping on calls after the webinar with those clients and walking them through their specific questions. Yes, it's free information. Yes, we don't know if they'll ever buy from us, but I do know for a fact that 6 months from now, if you asked all of those prospects, they would remember us because we created an impression. And so,
All right, I good.
That's
Yeah,
what we're doing.
I was going to ask 2 other people I know carried nice size quotas in the past. I used to be one. John, selling, and you when you carried a bag, how do you sell in this? I mean, what did you do?
Yeah, it's interesting. Tim makes some good points, and as I was, sort of thinking through my approach, he hit on 3 things that I would say I would do as well, in so many words. One is understanding your customers or your prospects' buying process, not so much your sales process. So, and I don't know, Tim, you may know this number better than me, but it's not like the old days where the prospect would use the salespeople as sort of their educational vehicle. Now, like 70, 60, some really high number of the decision to buy is made before the prospect calls the salesperson. So understanding their process, going back to building free content, and I was thinking of it a little differently, but Tim pointed the same concept out. Every time somebody joins his seminar, he's probably getting an email, he's getting some contact information. The industry suggests that each one of those emails is worth about $20. So building some sort of content in trade for a $20 worth of email, whether it's a template, an ebook, a guide, a free webinar, whatever, now you're starting to build your pipeline potentially, and they know who you are. So when they're ready to buy, they're going to call you up. And then the third is, and you just hit it again, Tim, it's hone your 30-second commercial, right? What are you going to, when you get somebody on the phone or in an elevator, what's your 30-second commercial? Rewrite it, because what you probably used 3 months ago is irrelevant. What you just said, Tim, is a great way of pivoting your 30-second commercial. So I recommend people rewrite or write a 30-second commercial and practice it. Pick up the phone and call your voicemail and practice your 30-second commercial. So it comes off in an empathetic, non-threatening, I'm not really here to sell you something today, I'm here to build a relationship. So those 3 things are sort of right on line with what Tim came up with as well.
Steve, you want to add to that?
I'm hearing all this, and I just been thinking through, and it used to be, it was a numbers game. If I called X number of prospects, I get some qualified buyers, and boom, it converts. And it's not so much a numbers game anymore. And I would spend, rather doing an hour worth of cold calls, I do an hour worth of research for one call that hits. And I thought, it's just a much higher connection rate, but you have to invest that hour, which we're not used to doing. This is that new normal. Like I said, I'm all over LinkedIn, digging around, and I'm using my network. Hey, do you know so-and-so? Way more than I did before. I'm trying to get to this guy. Do you know someone who knows? And, and I kind of track it down. It's like being a sleuth to get to meet the right person.
Absolutely.
And then I get one shot at it, and that works, rather than going, hey, I'm going to call 50 people. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, we got 5. Yeah, it doesn't work like that anymore.
But by the way, a lot of this is already in play and in motion, I would say. And it's just been, the buying process has radically changed in the last 10 years or so. And so I think a lot of this was already in play. This sort of situation has just sort of brought it to the limelight. And so those that are smart enough to pivot their sales strategy will do fine.
But the key point is, folks, deals are happening.
Yes.
You read about them every day. They're happening. So people are making it happen through great commitment, great effort, and a pivot in how they sell. So don't think that, nothing's happening, we're all locked down, we're in shutdown, it's not going to happen, right? Deals are happening. You just got to, may not be happening for you. You say, well, what are they doing that I need to do? And figure that out. But, don't take this as a vacation. I tell that everyone works for me. I go, I'm paying for you. I expect you to work. I still want my 40 hours, and be smart about it.
Right, and it may not pay off today or in the normal sales cycle time, but when things turn back up, you'll be in a position to have a nice full pipeline and make the money then. This is when you find out who the really good salespeople are.
Oh yeah.
That know what they're doing. So we are about out of time. I want to thank our panelists. You've done great things. We could go on for hours more on this topic. We want feedback. We want to hear which other topics you're looking for, things that you want to address. You can reach out to Jumpstart if you need help directly. There's an email address up on the screen in front of you. So with that, thank you all for attending. Thank you all panelists.
Hi, everybody.
And again,
Thank you.
Good luck. Be safe, everyone.
thank you. Stay healthy.